But it's not cat, like crown versus crayon.
Partner, so let's see.
What? No. Rachel, I believe I can do this, okay? I promise you that I'm not just sitting around doing that.
Yeah, it's Rachel. He's sitting around.
All right. Hey, good afternoon. You guys are pretty fired up. I don't know what's going on. I know it wasn't the baked steak at lunch or whatever that thing was, but
Country fried steak.
that's a fine baked steak, potato, anyway.
It's no country.
Hey, listen. Yesterday we finished up the president's timeline. If for whatever reason that's not turned in, make sure that you're getting that turned in today. Beyond that, I had said that on Monday we were going to spend the whole week kind of on this topic, and that as we covered it, we were going to look at it through two lenses. The first of that was going to be politics, and I think as we did that Monday and finished it yesterday, we saw a few maybe positives, a whole lot of negatives. I feel like, and it was through that I think we should have started to understand where some of the tension of this time period is going to come from. This is the time period leading up to the Civil War where Americans are starting to see the battle lines, I think, really being drawn as it comes down to the issue of slavery. We saw, I think, plenty of those lines drawn, whether it was the Compromise of 1850 with the Fugitive Slave Act, or whether it was, I'm having a brain lapse here. We talked about the Scott versus Sanford decision yesterday. I mean, both of those in particular, I think, are real low points. Where you've got, if you remember Scott versus Sanford, you've got an African-American man who is suing because he believes that he is now free. And not only does the Supreme Court not grant him that freedom, but they tell him, look, you don't even have a voice. You don't have a case to make because we don't look at you and see an American. We don't look at you and see a person. You're talking about being free under the Constitution, but the Constitution's only there for Americans, and we don't see you as an American. I mean, that's pretty brutal, right? That's pretty ruthless. So it's those types of events that we see in politics that really, I think, represent those battle lines being drawn. Now, as we move into the other lens, which is social reform, I think I talked about on Monday that.
Bless you.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, I talked on Monday. Listen, I talked on Monday that it's not all negative. That there are, I think, some substantial positives, and it's through these social reforms where I think a lot of those positives come up. Look, you guys know as well as I do. I don't care that you're juniors in high school. You guys know as well as I do that we Americans are really, really good at complaining. And that's fine, but what we're good at oftentimes is complaining and then not trying to offer any solutions, or complaining and not trying to actively work to make things better. It just makes us feel better, I guess, to go to Facebook and type up a complaint, right? And then see how many likes we get, right? What I appreciate about this time period is that there are a lot of examples where Americans stand up and look across the country and say, look, we've got real problems. This country has real problems. And yeah, we're going to complain about it, but we're also going to try to find ways to fix those problems. One of the problems that stands out, obviously, is slavery. But what we're going to see is that instead of people saying, oh, shucks, that really stinks, we see abolitionists stepping forward, putting their lives on the line at different times. One of the most famous abolitionists, maybe you've heard of him, Frederick Douglass. How many of you have heard of Frederick Douglass? Okay, Frederick Douglass was an escaped slave who became one of the loudest voices for abolition. Frederick Douglass in the 1850s, so within this time period, traveled to Pendleton, Indiana, and gave a big speech. And in the middle of the speech, a group of pro-slavery Hoosiers rushed the stage and beat the man within an inch of his life. If he had not been pulled off of that stage and rescued by a few of his friends, you know, he probably would have died in Pendleton. Unfortunately, he survives and goes on to become, you know, this great man. We're actually going to hear some of what Frederick Douglass had to say when we get into the Civil War unit. So, yeah, there are people who are standing up, who are speaking out, in a lot of ways are putting their lives on the line to try to achieve change. Another huge issue is drinking. Alcoholism rates in the United States at this point in time, 1830s through 1860s, the highest that the United States has ever seen. They make today's alcoholism rates look pretty good, right? And so Americans, again, stood up and said, this is a real problem, and we need to try to do something about it. So that's what the next couple of days are all going to be about. Identify the problem, yes, but also look at ways in which Americans tried to work towards fixing those problems. Right? And the way that we're going to look at both of these, I've got a number of different resources that we're going to use, but a lot of it's going to be done through primary sources. So can somebody help us out here, remind us what defines a primary source? We got
Straight from whoever said it.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly on the right track. I mean, I think it's all about time. When was it created? If it was a speech, when was it given? If it was a photograph, when was it taken? If it was a painting, when was it painted? Primary sources could be any number of things, from maps to speeches to political cartoons. I mean, the sky's kind of the limit. But the key here that makes it a primary source is that it comes from the time period that we're looking at. So if we're studying the Civil War, for a source to be primary, it has to come from the Civil War, not written 40 years down the road. So that's what we're going to spend a lot of our time with today, tomorrow, and even a little bit into Friday, is looking at several different primary sources and using them to see not only the problems of the time, but more than that, what Americans tried to do to make things better, all right? So we're going to have 6 groups running. We're going to kind of run this like a station. The round tables will be our station. What that means is that the 6 gals sitting back here, one of you needs to go to each table. I'll let you guys decide who's going where. It doesn't really matter. But we got 6 stations. We got 6 folks. So each of you move to a table. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, I'm coming around, folks, and putting red folders. Don't necessarily have to go digging through those just yet, but these are your primary sources. Now, if it looks like some of the folders seem a little thick, that doesn't mean that there's 50 primary sources in there, by no means. What I've done is I've made 5 copies of every source, because I don't want this to be something where you're sitting around waiting for source A, and Slowpoke has got his hands on it, and you end up having to try to wait for everybody to finish up. There should be enough copies of every source where Daniel here, who's going through right now, that's fine, Dan. You're good. You're not in trouble. Daniel immediately closed it. All right, but Daniel could have, if there's 4 sources in there, you could have all 4 sources in front of him at the same time if you wanted to. So that's why it's a little bit thick. All right, now. A couple things I'll point out about the folder itself, because I think even the folder is a resource, the red folder. On the front of each of these folders, if you can at least kind of see it on the table in front of you, I've given you 4 different things. Okay, the first is just simply an image, and it is a primary document, but it's an image that is tied directly to the topic. Right next to it, I've given a problem statement. I think that's key. We need to make sure that we understand what the problem of the time period is before we start getting into how Americans tried to fix it. If we don't understand the problem, then the fixes certainly aren't going to make much sense. So I've tried to give you just sort of a quick statement of that problem. Just below that, I've given you a QR code, and it tells you scan that on your computer. Remember, on the website, there's a link that says QR code scanner. You click on that and you scan that. It's going to open up a short 2-minute intro video about the topic. All right, and I would strongly urge you to watch that. It's only going to take you a minute. All right, you can watch it as a group for all I care. But watch that, because there are, not only is it just, I think, a good intro, but I think there's some information in it that can certainly help you to answer some of the questions that you'll need to answer. Last but not least, and this is a key, as I get the station guide out to you, you're going to need to know, which station you're at. So I've told you here, this is the reform movement. Reform means change. Reform means fix. So this is the fix. As you'll notice right here, this whole folder, this group, this station here is looking at the abolition movement. So the abolition movement is going to boil down to what social problem? Help me out. Abolition is a fix to what social problem? Slavery.
Okay.
Slavery, yeah. Don't overthink it, all right? So the problem statement's going to talk about some of the realities of slavery. The little intro video there, again, will give some information about, what's going on in the country at this time. And then the resources inside are going to give you, in different ways, some firsthand, in-the-moment type of evidence as to ways in which Americans are trying to fix these particular social problems, all right? So we've got 6 of them. We'll try to get through at least 2 of them today. I think that's a very definite goal here that we should be able to achieve, if not more. We've got abolition up here. This station's abolition, dealing with, obviously, the social issue of slavery. This table right here with Zane and Bo is dealing with the issue of alcoholism. That's the temperance movement. This group up here is one of my favorites. Some of these stations deal with very specific issues like drinking, like slavery. What I like about this station up here is that it sort of goes beyond that and just looks and says, yeah, we need to we need to get people to quit drinking, but we just also need Americans to start looking at the world in a different way, to start appreciating different things that they may not be appreciating at this time. We've got to change the entire way that we think if we're going to make something positive. And so that's what this station is all about. It's a station that's called transcendentalism. I know that sounds like a big loaded word there, okay? But it's this idea that we need to think beyond. We need to let our thinking transcend or go beyond, some of the petty issues that are dividing us within this country. So this one, I'll probably spend quite a bit of time at this station because I feel like I get the most questions here. So don't be afraid to ask them if you've got them. Station over here at Aaliyah's table focuses in on women's rights, which is a huge topic at this point because as far as women's rights go, they don't have any at this point in time. So this is really where that movement begins to try to secure several different kinds of rights for women, but this is where the push more than anything for women's vote is going to begin. Over here, we've got Second Great Awakening. The idea here being that if we're going to fix slavery, drinking, appreciation for women, any other issue, we need to get people back into church. All right, the idea that religion is going to help steer people in the right direction. So we're going to see the revival movement get started here. And that's what that station is going to focus on. And last but not least, the station right here is looking at another attempted fix at our problems. We need to get people educated. Education was a joke in this country before now. And so we're going to see individuals like Horace Mann, who you'll see right on the front cover of that folder, who are trying to reform the whole school system, try to get people more knowledgeable, and through knowledge, this country will be better off. All right? So we'll get through at least 2 stations today. I'll give you probably about 20 minutes at each station. I think that should be enough. Let me send around the station guide real quick. And I'm certainly okay with you as a group, discussing the sources that you decide to use, the information that I present to you. I'm okay with you working as a group on this. Just remember, as I always say, that doesn't mean that you copy each other's answers. Your group there is to be your ears. Your group there is to be your sounding board. Talk about these different things and what you think about them. And use those conversations along with the resources I've given you to help to answer, the 3 questions. That's all you got to answer at each station. Okay? Hey, before you get started talking, guys, what questions do you have for me? Okay, good question. Aubrey asked, when is this due? It will be due midway through class on Friday. I mean, you've got some time on this, so don't feel like you got to be in a huge hurry. Please be gentle to the documents. Okay, they got to get through 3 periods for 3 days, so don't be folding them, don't be tearing them. And when you're done at a station, please make sure that they are all put neatly back into the source folder. All right? I'll come around. I'll work with stations and groups as you may need them. Let me know what questions you've got. Oh, hey, hold on. One more thing. If you feel like some of the sources in your folder printed badly, if you have like a photo or a painting and you feel like it printed badly, if you go onto the website, I have given color copies, color versions of every single source in these folders. They're all just in a PDF. For example, if you go to the website, there's a PDF that says Education Reform. You'll find all of the sources in this folder in color, high res. They're there for you to use if you don't like the printouts. Also, if you have to miss a day, or if you decide you want to work on some of this in SPT, you don't have to come down here looking for the sources. I've got them on the website for you to use as well. It's entirely up to you. Okay? All right, that's it for me. I'll come around and answer questions, give you whatever help you need. But otherwise, let's get to work. I'm going to give you about 20 minutes on this particular station before we move on. Yes, Gavin. Yes. So, guys, we need to be productive. Maybe in a minute. Got here? I'll be there. Can I get attendance real quick?